Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about kind of where you should be getting your real calories when you're trying to gain muscle and stay both lean, as healthy as possible, and to gain the most muscle. And obviously we're eating protein. I'm going to tell most of you guys out there your baseline is 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. And if you want to eat more protein or you can handle it, you can handle the satiety, there's nothing wrong with going higher. But that is kind of your baseline to where you're going to see pretty close to optimal muscle growth, right? So outside of that, though, the question becomes, how do we fill in the rest of our calories? And there's a couple different strategies you can really use here. And again, I understand if people are hard gainers and they struggle to eat enough, maybe they need a little more refined junk. But generally speaking, if you can avoid eating a bunch of table sugar and saturated fat and stuff like that, you should. So the question becomes, where do we get our calories? Where should we get our calories? And I'm going to say it's going to come from really three sources. Three real sources. I would say starchy carbohydrates, and that's the beauty of starchy carbs, is that starches are all pretty well equal in terms of what we're doing. And in other words, starch is starch. Your body breaks down the glucose chains. They actually break down even your saliva starts breaking them down. Your stomach acids leave them apart, to where we're down to pretty quickly just pure glucose. And the only other real benefits from those foods is going to come from whatever vitamins and minerals are included. But generally speaking, the human body handles even refined starches very, very well. Okay. Again, you might have some food intolerances to something else in the food, but it's not the starch, right? It's never the carbohydrates in the starchy foods. So, that can even be from vegetables. Most vegetables are starchy carbs. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about grains, tubers, things like that. So potatoes, rice, oats, wheat, those things, right? Those are starches. And white rice is perfectly fine. If you want to sustain on white rice as a primary staple fuel source, hey, nothing wrong with that. It's great. Okay? It is not correlated with any form of disease. Anyone who tries to say, well, it's got this and that, no. Then where's the data? There's no data. There's nothing even in the epidemiology to suggest that populations that subside on white rice develop diabetes or obesity or anything. At significant rates. It's just simply not true. So, starches. Other carbohydrate sources that work great are fruit. Now, people will point out, what about fructose? Well, I've done whole videos on fructose metabolism and sugar. It's not something you should be concerned with in fruit. The fructose found in fruit, due to the nature of it, the full matrix of the food, the fiber involved, our gut tends to turn all of it into glucose. We're right back over to the same thing as starch for the most part. You can eat very, very large amounts of fruit and your body will convert all of that fructose into glucose very effectively through a couple different pathways. I've discussed those pathways in other videos. So ultimately, we're right back over to glucose because glucose is a primary fuel source. Okay. So those are two of the big ones. So what about fats? What if you do want to add fat? Because a lot of people do really well on a low fat diet. They can eat starches or fruit is the majority of their calories, because again, you can only eat so much protein. If we're physically active and we're lifting and have high energy turnover, we need a lot of calories. So protein is always going to be a smaller portion. So you're going to have the majority of your calories are going to have to come from somewhere else. And again, I am not talking about contest prep bodybuilders who are often on very low calories trying to diet off the last drop of body fat temporarily, right? Because they're going to regain that fat. So barring that, what else? So what do we do for fats? Well, largely avoid saturated fat, moderate it. And I'm saying avoid it completely, but it needs to be moderated, right? It needs to be moderated. Focus on polyunsaturated fats, primary, and then monounsaturated fats, your healthier fats. Why? Well, from the health end, obviously, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, anti-inflammatory, everything else. And that's something that people seem to miss. They want to talk about inflammation in the body, yet they'll eat saturated fat, and sometimes they'll be scared of the various polyunsaturated fats. The data doesn't support that. The data out there overwhelmingly shows that those are the fats that reduce inflammation, especially polyunsaturated fats, including omega-6. Okay? That theory that omega-6 is inflammatory as a whole has been completely debunked in the lab. Okay? That is a very outdated hypothesis that got debunked with modern data at least a decade ago. So these things tend to be anti-inflammatory. That includes things like peanuts, stuff like that. Now, you might have an allergy, and that's a different story. You got an allergy to a food, obviously, don't eat it. If you have an allergy and or intolerance to any food, common sense should be don't eat it. If you're lactose intolerant, don't drink milk. If you have a peanut allergy, don't eat peanuts. Should be common sense. That aside, those foods are fine. So what do we mean? We mean nuts, seeds, certain vegetable oils, right? Such as extra virgin olive oil, not a bad choice. Avocados, right? These should be your fat sources. And you can choose to go the other way. I mean, both extremes can work for people as far as fat versus carbs. And I want to be clear there. As long as carbohydrates are sufficient to fuel your training needs, you can fill a lot of calories with fat. But what I'm going to recommend, we come back over to insulin sensitivity. All right, saturated fat reduces insulin sensitivity over time. Polyunsaturated fats improve it. Mono can slightly improve it. So if you're eating your fats from these healthier fat sources, you're going to have better insulin sensitivity. You're going to gain muscle easier. You're going to lose fat easier. Okay? You're going to be healthier. So if you go that route, you could get the majority of your calories from healthy fats and eat enough carbohydrate to fuel your training and still hit those protein numbers we talked about. That's an option. Or you could go very low fat. If you go very low fat, you'll need to supplement a little bit of omega-3. Be a wise idea. And you could get all of your calories from starches, from fruit. Or you could have a balance somewhere in between. But the point is, people very, very effectively, and while having great health markers, utilize both strategies. Again, the idea here, obviously, you want to cut any trans fats out of your diet. You want to really minimize refined fructose, specifically your refined sugars. You want to minimize saturated fat with any route that you go. So in other words, lean animal proteins. The rest of your diet should probably be, grains, legumes, nuts, fruit, vegetables, any way you break it down. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.